A silent figure moves through the dimly lit atelier. Skilled hands trace patterns on fabric worth more than most people's monthly rent. In the fashion world's brutal hierarchy, Nia Chen hides in plain sight, invisible to the elite who depend on her talent. But tonight, as runway lights prepare to blaze, the industry's most celebrated designer is about to discover exactly who's been carrying his legacy. Before we dive into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from. The marble floors of Maison Lumiere's headquarters gleamed under soft, recessed lighting. Nia Chen kept her eyes lowered as she slipped through the corridors, clutching her portfolio to her chest. At 28, she'd spent 5 years as a pattern maker in the company's backroom studio, the invisible force behind the label's perfect draping and immaculate construction. "Watch where you're going," snapped Dominique Laurent as she nearly collided with him. The creative director didn't wait for an apology, his tall frame already pivoting away. Nia nodded reflexively, though he wouldn't see it. Her simple black shirt and trousers were designed to blend in, her dark hair pulled into a practical bun. Nothing like the flamboyant scarves and architectural silhouettes Dominique wore to command attention. The atelier buzzed with frantic energy. 3 days before the Paris Fashion Week presentation, and the collection still needed final adjustments. The pressure coiled in the air like smoke. "Chen, where are those sleeve modifications?" Marcel, the head of production, called across the workroom. "Dominique says they're still not falling correctly." "Just finished them," Nia replied, voice barely audible above the whir of sewing machines. She extracted the technical drawings from her portfolio. Marcel snatched them without looking at her. About time. She retreated to her station, fingers automatically reaching for her pincushion. Most pattern makers used computer programs exclusively now, but Nia still drafted by hand first. An old-school approach that earned eye rolls from younger colleagues, but yielded results that digital shortcuts couldn't match. "Did you hear?" whispered Lily, the intern assigned to Nia's station. "Francesca Belmont is coming to the fitting today." Nia's hands stilled momentarily. Francesca, fashion editor at Vogue and notorious for her scathing critiques, could make or break a collection with a single raised eyebrow. "The silk charmeuse gown isn't laying right," Lily continued. "Dominique's freaking out." "Which one?" Nia asked, suddenly alert. "The finale piece. The one with the waterfall back." Nia knew exactly which gown they meant. She'd flagged issues with the pattern weeks ago, but Dominique had dismissed her concerns with a wave of his bejeweled hand. "Not your department, Chen," he'd said. "Stick to transferring my vision, not critiquing it." Now reality was catching up to his ego. The thought brought her no satisfaction. The first incident happened that afternoon. Dominique strode into the workroom, his face tense with controlled panic. Behind him walked Francesca Belmont, her glacial perfection intimidating everyone into silence. "And this is where the magic happens," Dominique said with theatrical flair, gesturing around the workroom. "My technical team executes my designs with precision." Francesca's gaze swept across the room, lingering nowhere. "I'm more interested in seeing the finale piece. I understand there are issues?" Dominique's smile tightened. "Minor adjustments. Fashion is evolution, after all." The sample was brought forward, carried by a willowy model. Even on the hanger, the sapphire silk charmeuse caught the light magnificently. But when the model slipped it on, the problem became obvious. The back. Draping meant to cascade like water, instead bunched awkwardly at the hip. "This is disappointing," Francesca said, circling the model. "The concept is exquisite, but the execution—" She let the thought hang incomplete. Dominique's jaw clenched. "We're refining it. The pattern is being reworked." "By whom?" Francesca asked. Before Dominique could answer, Marcel jumped in. "Our team is collaborating on solutions." Nia stood silently by her workstation, watching the beautiful gown fail to achieve its potential. She knew exactly how to fix it: a slight adjustment to the bias cut, a recalculation of the drape points. Her fingers itched to demonstrate. "Perhaps we should move on to the rest of the collection," Dominique suggested smoothly. As they turned to leave, Dominique's gaze landed on Nia. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if daring her to speak up. She lowered her gaze, the moment passing like so many before it. "Chen, Marcel hissed after they left. "I want that gown fixed by morning, whatever it takes." "I tried to tell," she began. "No excuses. Just fix it." She worked through the night, meticulously redrafting the pattern, calculating the precise angles needed to make the silk fall perfectly. When she finally left at 3 a.m., her back ached and her fingers were pricked with pin marks, but she felt the quiet satisfaction of solving a complex puzzle. The second humiliation came the next morning. Nia had just arrived, exhausted but pleased with her work, when she heard Dominic's voice echoing down the corridor. "Absolutely brilliant, isn't it?" he was saying to a cluster of journalists touring the atelier. "I had a revelation around midnight about the structural issue. Sometimes genius strikes at unexpected moments." They rounded the corner to find Nia standing there, the revised pattern in her hands. Dominic faltered for just a second before his smile broadened. "Ah, Chen. Good, you've prepared the pattern for cutting. Make sure it's executed precisely as I've specified." The journalists nodded appreciatively, scribbling notes about Dominic's creative process and dedication. One of them glanced at Nia, clearly seeing nothing more than another worker bee in the fashion hive. "Mr. Laurent, what inspired the waterfall construction?" a journalist asked. "I spent time in Kyoto last year studying the movement of traditional Japanese gardens," Dominic replied. "The way water navigates stone, that tension between flow and structure, informed the entire collection." It was Nia's trip to Kyoto, her photographs of water patterns that had sparked the initial concept. She'd shared them during a rare team brainstorming session, only to see the idea reappear months later as Dominic's stroke of genius. Now he was claiming even her technical solution. "The pattern maker merely translates," Dominic was saying, gesturing dismissively toward Nia. "The vision, the creative spark, that comes from here." He tapped his temple with one manicured finger. The journalists nodded, not one of them asking for Nia's name or role. She stood frozen, the pattern clutched in her hands, as the entourage swept past her. "Make sure those adjustments are implemented immediately," Dominic called over his shoulder. "We can't afford any more delays." Several colleagues had witnessed the exchange, their expressions ranging from embarrassment to grim recognition. Everyone knew what had happened, but no one would speak of it. Lily appeared at her side. "That was awful," she whispered. Nia shrugged, the motion barely perceptible. "It's just how things work. It shouldn't be. Maybe not, but it is." The third incident, the one that changed everything, happened during the final fitting just hours before the collection would be transported to the runway venue. The atelier was chaos. Models, stylists, makeup artists, and production staff crowded every corner. Dominic stood at the center of it all, making last-minute adjustments and pronouncements. The sapphire gown, now perfectly reconstructed according to Nia's pattern, was being fitted on the runway model. The silk cascaded exactly as intended, the draping creating a mesmerizing illusion of flowing water. "Divine," said Francesca Belmont, who had returned for the final review. "You've worked a miracle, Dominic," he preened under her praise. "Sometimes one must go back to fundamentals to achieve transcendence." Nia stood nearby, pinning a last-minute hem adjustment on another garment. She kept her head down, focusing on her work, trying to ignore the familiar sting. Then, disaster struck. As the model turned, her bracelet caught on the delicate silk, tearing a jagged hole near the critical drape point. A collective gasp rose from the room. 3 hours until transport," Marcel shouted, his face ashen. The model began apologizing profusely. Dominic raised a hand to silence her, his expression murderous. "Fix it," he snarled at the nearest seamstress. "Sir, this requires reconstruction of the entire drape pattern," the woman stammered. "Other tension points are compromised. I can't." "Then who can?" Dominic roared, panic breaking through his composed facade. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Nia. Marcel cleared his throat. Chen constructed the revised pattern. Dominic's gaze fixed on her with the intensity of a predator. "Well, can you fix this, or should I start looking for a new pattern maker?" The challenge hung in the air. Nia looked at the torn gown, calculations already running through her mind. This wasn't just a repair. It required a complete reimagining of the structure. "I would need to reconstruct the entire back panel," she said quietly. "In 3 hours." Francesca Belmont raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. Less accounting for cutting. And sewing time, Nia replied. Dominic's laugh was sharp and dismissive. Impossible, even I couldn't. I can do it, Nia interrupted, surprising herself as much as everyone else. The room went still. No one interrupted Dominic Laurent. His eyes narrowed. Then do it, Chen. Right here, right now. Show us this miracle. Someone cleared a workspace. The damaged gown was carefully removed from the model and laid out. Materials were gathered, and then, for the first time in her career at Maison Lumière, everyone was watching Nia Chen work. Her hands moved with swift precision, drafting directly onto new paper with barely a pause for measurement. She didn't use a computer, didn't reference previous patterns. Every line flowed from her fingers with absolute certainty. She's not even using the forms, someone whispered. Nia didn't need them. She visualized the model's body, the movement, of the fabric, the physics of the drape, all simultaneously, all in perfect detail. This wasn't just technical skill. This was artistry at the highest level. She spoke only once, requesting a specific weight of silk from their limited reserves, a slightly heavier grade that would create an even more dramatic flow while being more resistant to tearing. As the minutes ticked by, the crowd around her workstation grew. Even Francesca Belmont stood watching, her expression inscrutable behind oversized sunglasses. Dominic hovered nearby, his initial skepticism giving way to stunned realization as the pattern took shape. This wasn't just a repair, it was an enhancement of his original concept, elevating it beyond what even he had envisioned. 2 hours later, Nia handed the completed pattern to the cutting team, along with precise instructions for construction. Her face remained impassive, but for the first time she stood at her full height, shoulders straight. "It's ready," she said simply. When the reconstructed gown returned from the seamstresses, even the model gasped. The draping now cascaded in, a more complex pattern, creating depth and dimension that made the original look flat by comparison. The heavier silk caught the light differently, adding richness to the color. "Put it on," Dominic ordered, his voice tight. The model slipped into the gown. When she emerged, the room fell silent. The garment moved like actual flowing water, responding to the slightest motion with hypnotic grace. Francesca Belmont removed her sunglasses. "Who are you?" she asked, addressing Nia directly for the first time. "This is Nia Chen," Marcel answered when Nia remained silent. "She's been with us for 5 years." "As what exactly?" Francesca pressed. "Pattern maker," Nia replied. "Pattern maker," Francesca repeated slowly. She turned to Dominic. "And you've had her making patterns?" Dominic's face flushed, his composure slipping. "She executes my vision." "No," Francesca interrupted. "What I just witnessed wasn't execution, that was creation." She gestured to the gown. "This is beyond technical skill, this is genius." The word hung in the air, stealing the one label Dominic coveted above all others. "I think," Francesca continued, her gaze still fixed on Nia, "we need to discuss how Maison Lumière credits its team in the program notes, starting with Ms. Chen's contribution to this collection." Dominic's mouth opened and closed without sound. Around the room, people shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Everyone knew how much of Dominic's vision had actually come from the quiet woman, now standing at the center of attention. "The show begins in 4 hours," Francesca said briskly. "I suggest we use that time wisely." She handed her card to Nia. "I'd like to speak with you afterward, Ms. Chen." The atelier erupted into motion again, but something fundamental had shifted. As people rushed to finalize preparations, many stopped briefly by Nia's station. A word of congratulations, a nod of acknowledgement, small gestures that had never happened before. Dominic stood paralyzed, watching his carefully constructed narrative crumble. His face had paled, then flushed crimson. A muscle twitched violently in his jaw. His hands, usually so expressive, curled into white-knuckled fists. At his sides, "This changes nothing," he finally hissed as he passed Nia's workstation. "One lucky save doesn't make you a designer." But his voice lacked conviction, and they both knew it wasn't luck. Years of silenced ideas, of stolen credit, of invisible excellence had culminated in this moment of undeniable proof. Nia met his gaze steadily. No, she agreed. It doesn't change the past, but it changes everything that comes next. She turned away from him, already focused on the final preparations. For the first time in 5 years, she didn't shrink under his glare or defer to his authority. The power dynamic had irreversibly shifted and they both felt it. Marcel approached cautiously. Chen, Nia, the program notes. Francesca wants your name included as associate designer. It was a significant promotion but still minimized her role. Before she could respond, Lily spoke up from nearby. But she's been designing half the structural elements for 3 seasons, the intern blurted. Everyone in the workroom knows it. Heads nodded around the room. The collective secret was finally being spoken aloud. Marcel had the grace to look embarrassed. I'll speak with the PR team about appropriate credit. As the gowns were carefully packed for transport, Nia noticed her colleagues looking at her differently. There was respect in their glances, but also questions. What would she do now? What would this revelation mean for all of them? Nia herself wasn't sure. For years, she'd accepted her invisible role, believing that her technical skills would never be recognized in an industry obsessed with front-facing personalities. Now that barrier had been broken and possibilities stretched before her like unexplored territory. In the immediate aftermath, Nia felt oddly detached from the commotion surrounding her. Her body was processing the surge of adrenaline, her hands trembling slightly when she reached for her water bottle. Heat rose to her cheeks as fragments of conversation reached her. Did you see how fast she drafted that pattern? Without computer modeling. Been doing this for years, apparently. Dominic had retreated to his office, the door firmly closed. Through the glass partition, Nia could see him pacing, gesticulating wildly, during what appeared to be a heated phone call. Francesca Belmont approached, her assistant trailing behind her. You'll attend the show tonight, she said. It wasn't a question. I'm not usually, Nia began. You are tonight, Francesca interrupted. Front row next to me. We have matters to discuss. The editor's tone brooked no argument. She handed Nia a business card with an address scrawled on the back. My stylist will meet you here at 5. The sapphire you just saved will suit you perfectly. There's always a sample in your size for final measurements. Before Nia could process this information, Francesca was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of expensive perfume and the business card clutched in Nia's hand. Lily appeared at her side with a cup of tea. You're shaking, she observed. Nia accepted the cup gratefully. It's just the adrenaline wearing off. It's more than that, Lily said with unexpected insight. You've been invisible for so long, you don't know how to be seen. The observation was startlingly accurate. Nia had cultivated invisibility as a defense mechanism, learning early in her career that drawing attention often meant becoming a target. Exceptional talent was threatening in an industry built on fragile egos. What will you do now? Lily asked. Nia considered the question. Finish the collection, that's all that matters today. But even as she said it, her mind was racing with new possibilities. For years, she'd maintained a private sketchbook of designs that never saw the light of day, concepts beyond Dominic's safe commercial vision. What would happen if those designs were finally given a chance to exist? Marcel reappeared, his usual, brusque manner softened by uncertainty. The car will take you to the venue at 6. You'll be introduced to key press before the show. He hesitated. Dominic is adjusting to the situation. He's agreed to share credit for this collection. How generous, Lily muttered. Nia shot her a warning glance. Despite everything, she had no desire to fuel workplace drama. Thank you, Marcel. I'll be ready. As the workroom emptied, staff departing to prepare for the evening's show, Nia found herself alone with the remaining garments. She ran her fingers along the precisely sewn seams, the perfectly balanced hems. Her work, invisible to the audience, essential to the art. Tonight, that would change. The thought terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. The show was a triumph. Standing backstage, Nia watched through a monitor as the models strode down the runway. Her patterns transformed into living art under the dramatic lighting. The audience response built steadily, appreciative murmurs growing into enthusiastic applause. When the sapphire gown appeared, the finale piece, the reaction was immediate and visceral. Gasps rippled through the crowd, phones raised to capture the moment. The model, sensing the impact, slowed slightly to allow the draping to perform its liquid magic. "That's your work," Lily whispered beside her. "They're applauding you." The thought was so foreign that Nia could barely process it. For years, her satisfaction had come from technical perfection that no one but she would ever fully appreciate. After the final walk, Dominic stepped onto the runway for his bow. He wore a smile that didn't reach his eyes, his confidence visibly shaken. Then, unexpectedly, he gestured toward the wings. "He's calling you out," Marcel said, giving Nia a gentle push forward. "Go!" Stepping onto the runway felt like crossing an invisible boundary. The lights were blinding, the applause disorienting. Nia moved cautiously to stand beside Dominic, maintaining a professional distance. His smile tightened as he took her hand in a grip just this side of painful. "Nia Chen, my associate designer," he announced, the words clearly costing him. The audience's reaction intensified, as if they sensed the significance of this unexpected introduction. Francesca Belmont, seated front row center, observed with calculating eyes. Backstage again, the atmosphere was electric with success and champagne. Industry insiders crowded around Dominic, offering congratulations. For the first time, some of them sought out Nia as well. "That draping technique was revolutionary," one buyer gushed. "Will you be developing it further next season?" Before Nia could answer, Dominic appeared at her side. "Ms. Chen and I will be discussing future collections," he said, steering the conversation away. Later, as the celebration continued at an exclusive after-party, Nia found a quiet corner to collect her thoughts. She was still wearing the sample gown Francesca had suggested. The sapphire silk moved with her like water, drawing admiring glances. "Hiding again?" a voice observed. Nia turned to find Francesca Belmont studying her with sharp eyes. "Old habits," Nia admitted. Francesca sipped her champagne thoughtfully. "Dominic will try to control the narrative. He'll claim he's been mentoring you, that your success is his achievement." "Probably," Nia agreed. "And you'll let him?" The question hung between them. Nia considered her position carefully. "Until today, I believed invisibility was my only option. And now I know differently." Francesca nodded, satisfied. "I have a proposition for you, not tonight. You need time to process today's events, but soon there are opportunities for talent like yours beyond Maison Lumière." The implications were clear. Headhunting in the high fashion industry was ruthless, and Francesca wielded enormous influence. "I'll consider any proposition," Nia said carefully. "Good." Francesca handed her another business card, this one plain white with only a phone number embossed in silver. "When you're ready." The editor moved away, leaving Nia to contemplate how completely her life had changed in a single day. 6 months later, Nia stood in a sun-filled studio in Milan. Large windows overlooked the Duomo, its marble spires gleaming in the morning light. Design boards lined the walls, covered with sketches and fabric swatches. Her sketches, her vision. After Paris, everything had accelerated. Francesca's proposition had turned out to be an introduction to Eliana Visconti, the matriarch of an Italian fashion house, looking to revitalize their brand with fresh talent. Within weeks, Nia had resigned from Maison Lumière and relocated to Italy. The transition hadn't been seamless. Dominic had threatened legal action over stolen techniques, a claim quickly dismissed when Nia produced her original sketches dated years before his innovations. Marcel had offered a substantial raise and creative partnership to keep her. Even Francesca had cautioned that such a dramatic move carried risks, but Nia had made her decision. Invisibility, once her shield, had become a prison. She needed to step into the light, whatever the consequences. Now she supervised her own team, implementing a collaborative approach that recognized individual contributions. Lily had joined her as a junior designer, her forthright nature proving valuable in the creative process. "The production samples are ready," Lily announced, entering the studio with a rack of garments. And you have that interview at 11. Nia nodded, examining each sample with a critical eye. Her first collection would debut in 3 weeks. A line that balanced artistic innovation with wearable elegance. Are you nervous? Lily asked. About the show? Terrified, Nia admitted with a small smile. But that's how I know it matters. The buzzer sounded, announcing the arrival of the interviewer from Vogue Italia. As Nia prepared to greet them, she caught her reflection in the window. Still the same person, but standing differently now. Shoulders back, gaze direct, no longer trying to disappear. Her phone chimed with a message. A photo of the latest issue of Vogue Paris, featuring Dominic's newest collection. The accompanying text from a former colleague read, "Inspiration looks familiar?" Nia smiled slightly. The designs showed a clear influence of her aesthetic. Imitation as the sincerest form of flattery, or perhaps desperation. She set the phone aside, focusing instead on the future unfolding before her. Success hadn't come from a dramatic revenge narrative or public humiliation of those who had dismissed her. It had come from finally valuing her own voice enough to use it. The true power had never been in making others small to appear bigger. It lay in creating space for authentic talent, her own and others, to flourish without artificial constraints. As she welcomed the interviewer into her studio, Nia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The fashion world remained as competitive and challenging as ever, but she moved through it differently now. Visibility required courage, but it also offered freedom she'd never known in the shadows. The sapphire gown hung in a glass case in the corner of her studio, a reminder not of humiliation overcome, but of potential finally realized. Some talents couldn't stay hidden forever. They emerged when needed most, transforming not just careers but lives. In the end, true value never needed announcement or acclaim. It simply needed the chance to be seen.